now in 2023, you still continue to see the wealth gap. Why do the rich continue to get richer, and then the despair between poverty, they continue to get even more poor?
Well, I think there is a little bit of a fallacy on wealth. If you take, it's also like big companies. Like people act like big companies control everything. That's just not true. So if you just go back and look at history, when I was in college, Microsoft didn't exist. Amazon didn't exist. Google didn't exist. Apple, let me see, when I was in, maybe Apple existed, but it was a nothing burger. The big companies were, there was IBM and Hewlett Packard and GE and GM and things like that. Also, all the wealthy people were like oil people. There was no tech people. So it is not true that wealth is stagnant. But the question is, how do you go from being poor to being wealthy? Was Bill Gates born a billionaire? No. Was Elon Musk born a billionaire? No. Was Jeff Bezos born a billionaire? No. Was Zuckerberg? No. Was Jack Dorsey? No. Nobody knew who they were. Their parents weren't billionaires. Now, they happen to be in ecosystems.
Fortunate situation.
They could be in ecosystems. They got some luck where they could apply their talent. So it is not in a rising stock market where you have most of your assets or financial assets like stock. So if the stock market goes up and most of your assets are in stock, or your business is a financial something where you're in finance, buying and selling bonds and T-bills and all this kind of stuff on behalf of the government, you're going to make a lot of money. But how many people even know? I wonder how many young people even really know what IBM does anymore. I don't think I've heard a person under 50 even talk about IBM. When I was young, IBM was the thing. IBM's, listen, relatively speaking, it's not in the top 10. None of the companies when I was young that were in the top 10 are there today. They're not. Tesla is more valuable than all the big three, what they used to call the big three. Now there's only two. Chrysler doesn't exist anymore. So wealth depends on participation in the modern parts of the economy. So I think it is not true that the poor keep getting poorer. What is true is that poor people, poor communities aren't participating in the economy in proportion to their talent. So we have this nostalgia for the 1950s where in every little town you had a factory. So if your economy was based on a factory, you've really suffered really since the early 2000s. Why? Because all the low-wage jobs have gone overseas somewhere. Now you have automation, so there's just not that many of those jobs anymore. But the question is our country more affluent or less affluent per capita than it was back then? It's more affluent. So those people that participate in the modern parts of the economy, the technical professional services, tech, legal, finance, they're doing well. They make more money than their parents. Now, if you're not in that, then you're going to have trouble. But imagine you could go back and have a conversation in the 1950s or in the 1930s. They will be talking about all the poor farmers and how the Industrial Revolution destroyed farming in America. Now, agriculture was the major industry in the United States at one point. Mm-hmm. Does anybody want to go back to that? No. What we need to do is to innovate our way out of that. And that's really one of the great things about this country when it's not hamstrung by government. And your job as an entrepreneur is to innovate. And most people don't understand what innovation is. Innovation is a scientific process of ideation, calculation, and experimentation. You're never going to get everything right the first time. But essentially, you're taking a guess or you have a hypothesis.
Sure.
You test that hypothesis. You want to get out there, but you got to use good principles. And if you don't do that in trying to be in business, you're going to fail. It's like trying to be a basketball player and not knowing how to dribble, pass, and shoot. You've got to understand to be successful in business. If you don't understand what a balance sheet is, an income statement, and a cash flow statement, you have no chance to be successful. So this issue of poverty, listen, poverty in the United States is nowhere near what poverty is in other parts of the world.
Sure.
I mean, poor people in India and Africa don't have 2 cell phones and a car. So what we have to do is to go back and look at what are the principles that have taken people from poverty to prosperity. And there's also a fallacy that you can just solve, you fix everything at one time. The way the world really works is, it is the entrepreneur that pulls other people forward. So you can have good entrepreneurship. So what we really have is a demand problem. If you fix the demand problem, the supply reacts to demand. So if you got people to do business in both urban and rural America, and that's where a lot of the poverty is concentrated. It's in both urban and rural America. But we have so little innovation now where people think about how can we creatively solve these problems instead of just running back to the 1950s and saying the world should be like that. Well, the world's never going to be like that. But if you look through innovation, there's all kinds of opportunities in the market that would take people out of poverty. That's why I think it's the entrepreneur that is going to create the environment that pulls people forward. That is the only way in history people have gone from poverty to prosperity. Not through government edict, definitely not through big companies. So anyway, it's my little